Mr. Chairman, Lynn Rutz with the Kansas Corporation Commission. I have 25 RS 0172, which would extend the commission timeline for issuing an order from 120 days to 180 days for line siting, electric transmission line siting applications.
Okay, any questions, committee? Okay, we'll count that as introduced. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Afternoon, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Doug Shane, Senate District 37. I'd like to introduce 25 RS 0416, bill concerning the State Corporation Commission providing for statewide election.
Is there any questions, committee? Okay, we'll count it as entered. Thank you. Do we have any other bills? Okay, then at this point, we've got a couple presentations today. First one is the Kansas Gas Service, and Patrick Vogelberg's going to be manager of government affairs, is here to tell us all about Kansas Gas. Patrick, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's good to be with you here today, and we appreciate the opportunity to be up in front of you. Okay. All right. Good to be with you today, and I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Patrick Vogelsberg, and I'm Manager of Government Affairs for Kansas Gas Service. I'll see if I can get this. There we go. Oop. Go back. There we go. All right. So Kansas Gas Service, it is a division of One Gas, and I like to remind legislators of that. We have three divisions, including Oklahoma Natural Gas and Texas Gas Service. You'll see on this slide, we have over 2.3 million customers across our three-state footprint. And I will remind, especially with my counterpart at One Oak here, we did spin off from One Oak. In 2024, we celebrated our 10th anniversary of that spinoff. And so every once in a while, I'll get asked the question, are you still part of One Oak? We haven't been for over a decade now. But if you do have questions, I'm happy to field phone calls for Michael and forward them on to him and vice versa. But being a part of One Gas certainly has its benefits for our Kansas division. We benefit from the economies of scale that are provided in the cross-functional subject matter experts across our three-state footprint. I'll move on to Kansas Gas Service. So the Kansas Gas Service division of One Gas, we have over 648,000 customers across 360 communities, more than 13,000 miles of pipeline here. Our division headquarters is in Overland Park, Kansas, but we also have facilities spread out across the state, and you'll see on this map where our service territories are at. But we'll have service centers spread out across the state so that our folks can get out into the field, operate and maintain our system, and respond to emergencies. And that's a good reminder of, every time the fire department is called to a house fire, we're also responding to those. And so that is on a daily basis across our three-state footprint. Here are certificated areas. Nick gave a presentation last week, giving some overview to how public utilities in Kansas are regulated and the statutory framework for public utilities. On this map, and I'd encourage you, I know it's quite small, even on the printout, but you'll see Kansas Gas Services certificated area. It's that light green color, kind of going from southwest Kansas up through north central and then to the eastern part of the state. And that is where our 648,000 customers are at. And then I'll point out kind of and this map is available and you can zoom in off the KCC website, but I'll point out that you'll see that large blue area that is Midwest Energy out in the western northwest area of the state. The other investor-owned utilities, Atmos and Black Hills Energy, you'll see Atmos is that yellow color where you'll find it over, northeastern part of the state, in the Johnson County area. We're also in the Johnson County area. Black Hills is that reddish orange color. You'll find them in Lawrence and down around south central Kansas, around Wichita. And then spread throughout the state are municipal gas systems. And I bring this up, it's not always relevant, as I think legislators should know who is providing gas service to their constituents. And it's not always relevant, and that's probably a good thing. Usually when it becomes relevant, there is some sort of an event or a winter weather event. And I can tell you that a few years ago, Winter Storm Uri, it became very relevant who was providing natural gas in the state and who was accessing that natural gas supply. And so for senators, you may have more than one investor-owned utility that's in your Senate district, and you might also have a municipal-owned utility in your system, in your Senate district. On this is a little bit of wellhead to burner tip. I do have a broader presentation that kind of walks those molecules through the natural gas value chain, but for today's purposes, I want to focus in on Kansas Gas Service. We are a local distribution company, and you'll hear that acronym LDC often throughout the industry. We take custody of natural gas at a city gate or a town border station, and then we distribute that through our system within the cities that we serve. Now, our sources, and this obviously isn't the scale, but those sources that you see up there, the production fields, those are hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. That is, we source gas in Kansas, we source gas in Oklahoma, Texas, and the Rockies. And we rely on the interstate transportation system, pipeline system, to get that gas here to Kansas. And for newer members and existing members, it's important to note there are similarities between the electric utilities and the natural gas utilities as it relates to who the regulators are. We're both regulated by the KCC, but also rate regulation. But whereas on the electric side, you may see some vertical integration. The electric company may own some generation, they may own the transmission, they may, and certainly own the distribution. Kansas Gas Service, in the natural gas side, there are 3 separate segments that are distinct. So we only own the distribution side, and we take custody of those molecules at the city gate and rely on the interstate system to transport that and rely on the producers to produce that reliable gas supply for us. Now, I did mention that we are regulated utility and we are rate regulated. And from time to time, every single year we make investments into our system to make sure that we have a reliable natural gas system and that we continuously make improvements to the integrity of our system. And that will require us to go file a rate case, and we did so in 2024. And I provided you here a brief kind of snapshot of the procedural schedule for our most recent rate case. That starts with us filing an application and providing testimony from our company as to why, to justify the needs for the increase in rates. Staff and other interveners join in on that rate case and make data requests, and we go through a discovery process. There's opportunity for public comment, public hearings, and ultimately what this led to was a unanimous agreement being arrived to between the parties and the interveners, and that unanimous settlement agreement was approved, resulting in a net $35 million revenue increase, which ends up being about $4 a month for the average residential customer. All right. I'll be on this slide for just a little bit, but these are the benefits of natural gas. And, what I wanted to convey to you all is that the benefits of natural gas, in order for them to be realized, it requires our company working with policymakers such as yourself to make sure that on energy policy, to make sure that customers get the benefits of this product. And Energy policy, this is maybe an understatement, but there's kind of two main elements that drive energy policy, and that's physics and economics largely. And you see that played out here in the benefits: safe, reliable, and affordable. And there are different alternatives out there for energy, but the question that we encourage policymakers to ask themselves is it safe, is it reliable, and is it affordable? And you can run that through, you can run natural gas through that, you can run coal through that, you can run wind through that, and nuclear. And you just ask those questions. But in regards to each one of these, the industry has worked with policymakers to make advancements. So for instance, and I'll just give some examples of how we've done that with the Kansas legislature. For safety, you start off with the regulatory construct and the codification of the regulatory scheme, the creation of the KCC, but you also have pipeline safety regulations, pipeline safety programs that come down from the federal government that the KCC enforces. With safety, it's very important for our company that our workers, when they go back home at the end of the day, that they show up back home the same way that they left it, and they're safe and healthy. So adding utility workers to the move over law a few years ago was very important, and an example of how we've worked with the legislature to make sure that our employees are safe. But when it comes to our customers and the communities that we serve, you have something like the Kansas Underground Utility Damage Prevention Act, KUDPA. That's call before you dig. That's 811. And Mr. Chairman, you'll remember we had legislation a couple years ago where we made some adjustments to that act. But KUDPA, underground damage prevention, is extremely important from a safety perspective. We're doing a lot of work upgrading our system. We're not only a facility owner that has responsibilities for getting out and marking that system, but we're also one of the largest excavators in the state. And so we see that from both sides. And, with the amount of dollars, one thing to keep in mind is with the amount of dollars, for instance, that's been spent on broadband deployment throughout the state, those are bore excavators coming in and installing that fiber optic. And so it's very important that for everyone involved, that the facilities get marked, people are calling in locates, and that we're responding to make sure that our customers and communities are safe. With reliability, I'll point out, one thing that we rely on to make consistent investments in our program, in our pipeline replacement program, is the gas system reliability surcharge, which was authorized by the Gas Safety and Reliability Policy Act some time ago. That allows us to go in and provide updates to our system, replace vintage materials, and we get the benefits not only of safety, we get the benefits of reliability, but also get the benefits of reducing emissions from any leaks that we may have. In regards to affordability, we need to recognize, yes, our rates are set by our regulator, the Corporation Commission, but we need to recognize the affordability of the resource itself, of natural gas. We've seen historic lower prices of natural gas, and that is due in no small part to our producers that are across the country being innovative and bringing that supply online for us. And that portion of a customer's bill, of course, customers, they'll look and they'll see kind of the bottom line number, and that's what's important. But often, about half of the bill can be made up of just whatever the commodity price is. And we make no money off of the commodity price of natural gas. What we pay for our gas supply and what we pay to transport it to our system and any storage is what our customers will also pay. And our customers have benefited from those natural gas prices. Another aspect of affordability is making sure that customers continue to have access to natural gas. And, a few years ago, that wasn't really a question, but we've seen in the interim where cities in certain areas of the country went down an energy policy route to try to limit energy choice. And Kansas responded, as did many other states, and our 3 states within our service territory responded as well with passing energy choice legislation. And we have the Kansas Energy Choice Act that passed in 2021. And Senator Thompson, I know that you'll be familiar with that as you carried that legislation in the Senate. And then lastly, on sustainability, natural gas at its core is a foundational fuel, and it's an enabling fuel. It has enabled, it's an enabling fuel because it has solved for the intermittency of some other resources that are out there. But as we have an emission reduction goal for our company, but we're going to achieve that emission reduction goal through our pipeline replacement program. And as we do that, as we replace older materials, our system gets tighter, and we get an emission reduction benefit from doing that. I'm almost done here, Mr. Chairman, but we don't always do it for the awards, but it's certainly nice when it gets recognized. And what you'll see here is One Gas receiving American Gas Association Safety Achievement Award for the 7th consecutive year. We're very proud of that. We're proud of our culture of safety, and something that is our number 1 core value. All right, this image right here, I think should give you it gives me some peace of mind. And one, that our 3-state footprint overlays some of the largest natural gas reserves in the country. And then the image on the left signifies how much natural gas infrastructure is already in the ground, and our ability to have access to those supply basins and then get it up to our customers in Kansas. And in an era of expanding energy needs, and we'll hear that a lot, there's much more energy that is going to be required going into the future. It's certainly understandable that companies that are interested in expanding or relocating or reshoring their manufacturing, identifying, I think, being near energy supply is going to be important. And then if you're not near energy supply, is do you have the infrastructure? Is it built out? Or are you going to run the risk, the hurdles and the expense of putting in the transmission to get that energy to where you're at? And so our company certainly is seeing the economic development and the interest in the whole I-35 corridor from Texas all the way up through Kansas. This slide 11, this shows you peak days for the electric side and the natural gas peak day. And that peak day is when we design our gas supply plan, what we need to make sure that we are providing to our customers. And what this shows is, in our gas peak day typically arrives this time of the year. Maybe, knock on wood, maybe it was Monday and Tuesday this week. Uri happened in February, so we may still have some time. But there's a lot of energy that is required that we are reliant on. And this is national data. But it is a significant amount of energy that we rely on to get through the coldest days of the year. And, there is, as asked those questions before, there is no safe, reliable, and affordable alternative that is currently existing today to make up for this energy demand that we see. On slide 12, this is a snapshot of customers and natural gas customers in the U.S. and Kansas. This is aggregate data, not just Kansas natural gas customers. But you'll get a feel for the numbers. Residential customers, there's a lot of them. There's fewer commercial customers and even fewer industrial customers. But you'll see those industrial customers use a lot of natural gas and commercial. But, you know, behind each one of these customers, I think I'm one of those Kansas Gas Service customers, and I count for one. But behind that meter is my wife and my 3 kids and my dog, and we rely on the gas service for our home heating and cooking and water heating and such. And for commercial, similar uses, you know, heating and water heating, industrial uses a lot more natural gas. Because they may use it for feedstocks and process heat and such. But, you know, behind each one of those customers is a family, it's a household. And behind the commercial or industrial meter is a business or jobs. And so when we look at what is behind the meter, it's life, it's the economy. And it is an awesome responsibility to have to provide the energy to support both of those. And then in my last slide, here is a trend. I wanted to point out a few trends. So on the right, you'll see this line graph, and notice the blue line. All right, that is the seasonal fluctuation of natural gas for residential customers, and you'll see the peak days hit, and you'll see it hit right in the middle, right? About January, February. That is the peak that we need to be able to hit for our residential customers. And then you see the shoulder months. The shoulder months are April to October, also known as injection months. Those are months in which we're going out and buying natural gas when it is historically cheaper, and we inject that into storage. And then we use that storage gas during the wintertime to meet our demand, but it also provides a physical hedge and a financial hedge against any sort of market volatility that we may be experiencing in the wintertime. Commercial customers, that's that red line, similar usages, right? Similar peaks and valleys. The industrial line, green, that's what I mentioned. You know, there's industrial feedstocks and process heat, consistent elevated usage throughout the year. And then the yellow line, and I want you to compare the Kansas yellow line, that is the amount of natural gas going into electric generation, and compare that with the U.S. You'll see the U.S. number, yellow line, is much higher. And that is because across the country, more natural gas goes into electric generation as compared to here in Kansas. And that just comes down to the generation mix. In Kansas, we utilize natural gas for electric generation. We utilize coal, we utilize nuclear, we utilize wind. But what I want to point out is, and you'll see this trend line both on the left and the right, but take a look at the right for Kansas, and notice the 2018 peak, the yellow line peak, and then compare that with the 2024 peak. And you'll notice that the trend line is going up. And that is certainly something that we're experiencing. You know, we do transport some natural gas for electric generation in the state, and we're seeing more natural gas head in that direction. And I know Evergy has announced their intentions to bring a couple new natural gas plants on. And so, you know, going forward for the country and for our state, we're going to see more natural gas going into electric generation. But I will point out that, you know, and we serve that, but from an efficiency standpoint, the direct use of natural gas is going to be the most efficient use of that molecule. But we certainly recognize the value from a safety and reliability and affordability standpoint of using that natural gas on the electric side as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, my final slide, maybe the most important one, is just my contact information. If you ever have any questions regarding natural gas service, constituent issues that come up, feel free to reach out to me. If we're not the local distribution company, we'll point you in the right direction. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Committee, you got any questions? Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it very much. You know, one of our issues around Winter Storm Uri was the speculation that drove up prices and bankrupt some small cities and stuff like that. Are we still obtaining our supply in about the same way? One third the long term, one third medium, and one third still on the spot market? And I mean, we got lucky earlier this week. It was just a quick spike, but how can you,
Yeah.
how are you guys dealing with that potential problem for the future?
Yeah. So, with Winter Storm Uri, from an operational standpoint, I think our natural gas system performed remarkably. But there was the financial aspect of it, and we went to work afterwards to mitigate the impact through securitization and such. I think all gas companies evaluated, where they were, evaluated their gas supply plans. And I think it should be noted that I think our customers benefited from our gas supply plan during Uri. It further mitigated the results of the spike in prices. But in the afterward, identifying opportunities for greater storage of natural gas, and as I mentioned, that operating as a physical and financial hedge. So looking at storage, looking at any financial hedges program that we work with the Kansas Corporation Commission on to, try to insure against some of those price spikes. I mean, with hedges, it's an insurance policy. You have to pay a premium to get that, and so you don't want to, get too wild with it. But I think we're at a point with our regulators that we're comfortable with, and we're always evaluating our natural gas supply where it's a combination of long-term contracts, seasonal contracts, shorter-term contracts, and a little bit of spot that's there. And we file that gas supply plan with the KCC on an annual basis and subject it to scrutiny. So I think we were prepared for Uri, and I think we've made some improvements since then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Patrick, for your presentation. Regarding regulation of the industry, I think a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a different bill that would impact new construction in the area and not banning the use of natural gas in the new construction, if I'm kind of remembering it correctly. Are we kind of out of the woods on that issue? If you could talk about that a little bit.
I'm happy to. So that legislation, the Kansas Energy Choice Act, was in response to City of Berkeley was the first city in California to go after banning natural gas in new construction. And in Kansas and other states responded in passing energy choice legislation to prevent that from occurring. The Berkeley-style ban, I think, has went away. In fact, the city of Berkeley and their ban was subject to litigation and was challenged and overruled even in California. But you see a pivot from an all-out ban to going into trying to affect people's uses of natural gas through building codes and various other things. And I think that our Energy Choice Act protects against those policies as well. So from a state level perspective, I feel that maybe the pendulum is swinging back a little bit. In the interim between Berkeley and the passage of a lot of those energy choice laws, we also saw the federal government through various agencies and rulemakings get into issues like energy efficiency and the uses of various natural gas-fired appliances. And those have been subject to litigation as well. But there's been a change of administration and probably a different direction on how federal agencies are going to use their rule and regulation powers.
Thank you, and you're keeping an eye on that?
Absolutely.
How the federal rules and regulations might impact here in Kansas. And I know the legislature kind of keeps an eye on that as well, because I do feel that, Kansans would want choice when it comes to, even the home appliances that they use. So thank you for keeping an eye on that as well, and the Energy Choice Act. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, any other questions? I've got a couple for you here, Patrick. When you talked about buying gas from other states around, and we got the Yucatan field sitting right here. The cost of transportation and that kind of thing, how does that process work? Or has Yucatan already been sold out somewhere and we're buying somewhere else, or how does that work?
I think once, that Kansas gas, Hugoton gas, similar to other, once it enters the interstate system, it's on the interstate market, and gas that we're utilizing here, certainly a portion of it is Kansas source gas, but once it gets into the interstate system, it could be mixed with gas from other portions of the state. And really, it comes down to, we not only will go out and we have our gas supply plan, and when we procure gas, we have a competitive bidding process that suppliers go through, and really we're looking at reliability of getting that supply to us, and then also looking at the affordability of it. And we also have to go out and find the transportation for it. So it just depends on how good of a price it is at the time, and if we're looking for long-term seasonal gas contract, long-term gas contract, or some short-term, daily spot prices. So it just kind of depends.
So this is a 101 question, Pat. Is there, when you look at oil, you got light, sweet crude, and you got heavy oil. Is there different types of gases, like gas is 4 states away versus what Yucatan, as far as the makeup of that gas?
There are some different qualities around natural gas. Primarily, you have dry gas, and then gas that needs to have the water pulled out of it, and that's more upstream from us. That natural gas processors will get in, but we do have a certain standard for the gas line quality. We do have quality standards for the gas that's entering into our system that our gas suppliers are going to need to provide to us.
Well, last question, the last cold snap that we had here a while back, things went well, no hiccups on that, so.
No hiccups. The system performed very well for us, and it wasn't due to not being prepared. We prepare months in advance of the winter season, not only with our gas supply, but also making sure that any projects with any system improvements that we've needed to complete have been completed, and it performed very well. So, and we'll be prepared for the next cold snap.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, committee? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a gentleman by the name of Michael Gillespie, which is the Director of Government Relations for Oak One. Welcome to committee, Mike.
Mr. Chairman. Light on, light out. There we go. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. It's good to see the familiar faces, the new and the old. And I'm not saying your face is old. I'm saying, yeah, I've seen you for a while. There you go. But my name is Michael Gillespie, Director of Government Relations for One Oak. And I appreciate Patrick. I thought he was going to go 55 minutes, and I was just batting cleanup with 5 on his wellhead to burner tip. But I plan to do a little bit of overview, talk about One Oak, but also kind of the midstream space, so you can understand how the product actually gets to you. So you can use it in your car, you're eating your home, whatever else. I think my kids don't have a clue how electricity gets there. They just think it just shows up, or the bread just shows up. They don't have an idea that actually takes all the steps to get it there. And so, well, you can just skip over the first page of the testimony that I have, and so we'll go to the second page. You'll see it's the back side of the front page on just overview of what upstream, downstream, and midstream would be, as well as go to the back page with the map as well. So if you want to separate those two, you can see the map of One Oak, our footprint, as well as the kind of the diagram I have from GPA Midstream, Gas Processors Association Midstream. But One Oak is a natural gas liquids company. I used to say that every single time I gave a presentation before the legislature for the last decade plus. But as of September 25th, my birthday, 2023, ONEOK purchased Magellan Pipeline Company. So not only are we in the natural gas pipe liquids business, we're also in the refined fuels business and in crude oil. So when I say refined fuels, I'm talking about gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and the different iterations that are there, as well as moving crude oil as part of the Magellan system. And we have also just recently, so the map's not quite up to date, we've recently looking at or acquiring Medallion Midstream and InLink Midstream, which would add more facilities in Oklahoma, Texas, and us also moving us to Louisiana as well. But we operate in 18 states with over 50,000 miles of pipe. And ONEOK started as a company in Oklahoma in 1906, and so we've been operating for over 100 years. And when we think about acquiring companies rather than just building a new pipeline, do the company cultures clash or do they mix well? And so from the year and plus that we've been operating and working with Magellan employees and their operations, I feel like that our safety cultures really do mesh very well together, and so it's been a good acquisition, making sure that our ONEOK safety culture does not get diminished by any acquisition, and Magellan holds the same. But with our 50,000 miles of pipe and our nearly 4,600, 4,800 employees, we have substantial assets here in Kansas as well, with about 7,000 miles of pipe from natural gas liquids, natural gas, and crude oil pipelines, refined products pipelines, and about 320 employees. We have, majority of our facilities are either in Kansas City, Hutchinson, Conway, Kansas, so just west of McPherson, and Bushton, Kansas. And that's where we have our natural gas liquids fractionation facilities. And so let's see if I have pictures quickly. I'm going to pass these, if you don't mind, so you can just send them down the edge. But what I provided is a picture of one of our natural gas liquids processing facilities. And so as part of the midstream business, not only are we just transporting natural gas or crude oil from the wellhead, there are also things we do, the services we provide to make it into a product that you all use. So crude oil won't be directly used unless it's refined. Natural gas liquids won't be directly used, or natural gas in that matter, until it's been processed. And so these are giant shiny towers we have. This is at our Bushton facility, so near Hollywood or Ellsworth, Kansas. And it's just a big chemistry set. When you put our natural gas liquids into the system, you heat it up, and the lightest goes out the top, and the rest of it keeps going. So propane would come out, and then purity butane would come out, ethane, and natural gasoline. But what I'd like to do is give you a little kind of tour of if there was a molecule of natural gas up in Wyoming or Montana or North Dakota, how would it get to you in Kansas or eventually get to your gas tank or into your home? So if you look at the big map of ONEOK, we have a lot of facilities, a lot of dark blue in North Dakota and Montana. And that's where our natural gas gathering is, the back page, sorry. That's where natural gas gathering is. And so we connect directly to the wellhead, and at the wellhead, three things come out: natural gas, oil, and water. And water usually is taken, separated, and either treated and disposed of, or used as gray water. The natural gas would go to a natural gas processing plant that we would own, and that's separate there. It separates it until the dry gas, the methane that Patrick mentioned as part of the utility, and then the heavier part, the natural gas liquids, will be what we would take to our processing plant, or natural gas fractionator. And so there's a dotted line from North Dakota, western North Dakota, that makes its way to Chicago, and that would be the natural gas heading to Chicago for manufacturing and or residential heating. But there's like an orangish purple line that goes on the eastern side of Montana, Wyoming, northeastern Colorado, and down into central Kansas, and that's our natural gas liquids pipeline. That's our Elk Creek pipeline that moves about 300 to 400,000 barrels a day of natural gas liquids, and that's the heavier part of the natural gas liquid stream, and that makes it down to our Bushton, Kansas facility. At Bushton, we then process it and turn it into purity propane, butane, natural gasoline, and ethane, and then ship it off to another location for it to be used. And one of the things that when you think about a midstream company, majority of us do not own the actual product. We're more or less the highway and service provider, so we're a toll road, if you will. So we have a fee that you'd be paying to move it from a location to a location. There's potentially a fee for storage, potentially a fee to process it and turn it into a refined product, and/or then get it to the final distributor. And so ONEOK does not have any distribution, so we're not a utility. I think I'll probably say this about 15 times in my presentation, hopefully not, but we're not a utility, but we get as close to the end user as possible. There's not a ONEOK gas station, there's not a ONEOK propane tank that you would see, but we get it to the propane distributor or to the actual Casey's or Sinclair or whoever would come and pick it up, the gasoline, and we kind of get it to the town border station for utility, but we actually don't have the final end service. So say that molecule that made its way down from North Dakota down to Bushton, we're going to go with butane would be something we have. That butane would head on a pipeline potentially to one of the refineries in Kansas, and the crude oil that we now gather in Colorado would come from Colorado, maybe go to Cushing, Oklahoma, and then come up to a refinery in Kansas. And that gasoline that was blended at the refinery would then use butane to help increase its volatility. So when it's cold outside right now, it helps it start in a cold time. And so that butane would get blended in by either a company like ONEOK or a refinery during the wintertime to help get to a place that is right formula for your engine. And then when it come to one of our refined products terminals. So if you look at the green dots, there's tiny little green dots, so some in Kansas City, so our Olathe facility, our Kansas City facility, our Topeka facility, and then we have facilities in Valley Center, Great Bend, Scott City. They come to one of our facilities, and we have these giant white tanks above ground, where a truck from a Casey's or P66 or Love's or whoever would come pick up that gasoline and deliver it to their local gas station, thus getting you that molecule from, whether it's the Bakken or from Colorado, the crude, coming, mixing, and getting it to you. And so there's a whole lot of process to get it there. And so I'm thankful for the hardworking men and women over the last few weeks, with the cold snap and just keeping America going. So not only are we providing that natural gas for the homes, but also fuel to keep everyone going. But one of the things that I've learned since the acquisition of Magellan is aviation fuel. So I hadn't really thought about it, but for you to go to your vacation, whether you're flying to Mexico or wanting to go to DC for any events this last week, how did that jet fuel get there? And so as part of our refined products system, which is the largest in the nation, 9,000 plus miles of our system, we're connected to the major refineries in the mid-continent. So that would be Coffeyville and Hawaii, Frontier and CHS in Kansas, but also the facilities in northern Oklahoma and Houston. And we can get that molecule, jet fuel, that most kerosene, into our pipeline and make it all its way up to the Kansas City International Airport. We're the largest provider of jet fuel for the airport there, and so while we don't own the product, it is coming through our system to make sure it gets there. And so the reliability of our pipelines are important. And so not only do we do integrity on the construction, making sure we're x-raying welds and we're doing everything, inspecting it with third-party inspectors, but we're also regularly having inline inspections. We do pigs or smart pigs that are running through the pipeline regularly to check for anomalies or any other issue to ensure that pipeline continues to run. Because if you think about disruption of our pipelines, our pipeline system, if it's not moving by pipeline, it's moving somewhere else, some way else. And that could be rail, that could be truck. And while I think any way to move that product to market is good, I think pipelines are the most affordable way, the safest way. We have the best track record. And if you imagine the amount of product we're moving in a pipeline would be on a semi-truck, you'll be adding thousands, if not tens of thousands of semi-trucks a day. And my biggest pet peeve is traffic. So I prefer to be moving in a pipeline rather than having to follow a bunch of trucks everywhere. And so pipelines are the way to go for the way we move our product and to move the most product. As far as thinking about how that product gets to you, this is a 24/7 basis, a 24/7, 365. And so we have operators sitting at our control center in Tulsa that are regularly on shifts. that they're literally watching the pipeline move the product, making sure all the pressures are good, all the gravity flow is good. So we have 24/7 monitoring on all of our pipelines. And I think that's important to know. It's not just a, 9 to 5 or 7 to 3:30, but it's constantly being monitored. So we're making sure that if there ever was an, rupture or anything like that, we'd have the capability to know where it is and be able to respond to it immediately, but also having employees situated along our pipeline route to be able to respond to any of those events. One of the things I've really been excited about with the Magellan acquisition is the amount of time that they spend with first responders. We invited first responders to come to our facilities to make sure that they know if they're responding to an event at our facility or along a pipeline, that they're aware of what they're dealing with, they're well-trained, they're well-equipped to do their job. And so that partnership that we've seen with our facilities and the Magellan, but also the legacy One Oak facilities, to make sure that safety is critical, not only just for our employees, but for those who are neighbors of our facilities and the surrounding. I really don't have a whole lot else. Patrick did such a great job. I just wanted to back cleanup for that, but just kind of to give you a glimpse of how that molecule will get from the field to here. We've started the plans for constructing a new pipeline from Scott City, Kansas to Denver for the purpose of providing more gasoline and diesel service to the Denver metro area, but also for providing more jet fuel. And that jet fuel is coming from Kansas refineries to then fuel the potential growth of the Denver International Airport. Over the last 3-4 years, United Airlines has said they wanted to add 100 gates to their Denver facility. And so if you imagine, they don't really fuel at every single airport. Their main refueling hubs in Denver is one of those locations, along with there's Atlanta and Houston and some others. And so the idea of that growth is not only beneficial for Denver, but beneficial for our Kansas refiners, who also get their their crude from various locations. And so it's a good project that we're going to be starting to work on. And so that would be from Scott City to Denver. And along with that, upgrading some of our facilities along the way. So at El Dorado, at Great Bend, adding some pipelines in there and storage to continue to grow the synergies of our business from the acquisition of Magellan and continue some growth at One Oak. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions. I try to keep it fairly simple. Like Patrick said, he'll take all of the calls for me and just let me know if anything pertains.
Michael, thank you for your presentation. Committee, you got any questions? Well, we got a bunch here now. Okay. Here we go, Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for coming today. I'm very interesting to learn about natural gas. I actually traded it with options, and the people that do that, you go to these forums, they call it the Widowmaker because it's volatile and they'll blow you up pretty quick. But speaking of blowing up quick, I am curious as to, obviously it's very safe the way you guys handle it. I have no concerns in that regard. But what about bad actors? Do you guys try to prevent that in some way?
So we can only control who we can control. We do have rigorous steps for any of our contractors because we do hire a considerable amount of contractors at One Oak. So in the 160 years, the 115 plus years now of One Oak operating, we have had 0 mass layoffs. And that's pretty unheard of for big companies like ours. But that's because we rely heavily on contractors and contractors in our local areas. So we'll be hiring contractors in Hutchinson for our Hutchinson facility, El Dorado for El Dorado and the like. And so I think we do our best as we're screening and finding contractors and those who operate the right way. And for the rest of the industry, we hope that there are standards in place. That they're complying the same rules and regulations that we're complying with. But I think because we haven't seen a lot of turnover as with our employees, I think we've found that we're the company that people want to work for. And that's been very helpful for maintaining that positive relationship for others in the industry.
If I can clarify, I was thinking more like terrorism.
Oh, sure. So we regularly work with the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and some other folks to ensure that we're paying attention to not only just cybersecurity, but physical security, but also cybersecurity. When you look at the map of our footprint, there are some very remote locations. And ensuring that if we don't have an employee who's regularly stationed there, that we have physical security and capabilities to monitor that, to ensure that that we're not missing out on any chances of loss of integrity of our facility, strikes, ruptures, whatever it would be, for those bad actors. And we do operate in some places where the locations may not be as favorable as they would be here in Kansas. But due to that effort, we try to ensure to work with local and federal law enforcement to ensure that our critical pipelines continue to operate and do it safely. That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Senator Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question. In Oklahoma, I still see gas flaring, and I wonder, is that just no gathering lines maybe, or quality issues?
Right. So if you look at near production, you see gas flaring, that's very likely not having gas gathering close in proximity. And so we have been part of the solution up in North Dakota, but it's much quicker to go and drill a well than it is to actually go and build a gathering pipeline to get there. The permitting, landowner acquisition, easement acquisition just takes a lot longer. And so we try to work really closely with the producers to know what their drilling plans will be, so we have an idea of what the lead time would be for making sure we have the amount of pipe to gather it. But there's often that there aren't enough hours in the day to build as much pipeline as they're currently drilling to fulfill that need and capture that gas.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Though I do hate to see some of that as like student loan money just floating away into the sky and being burned.
Senator Bowser.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation today. Very good. I got a pipeline question for you.
Sure.
Maybe kind of a couple questions here. Whatever happened to the Keystone Pipeline? Is there still a desire to get that thing back online? If it comes back online, would you guys be able to leverage that? How would that impact Kansas City?
So I don't work for the company that now owns it, and so I have no clue. I know that there is continued demand, and though it may be export demand rather than actually domestic demand, there's still demand and the need for production. The hardest thing for people to wrap their heads around is the cleanest molecule of oil and gas produced nearly in the world is in the United States. And so if we were to care about, all the different emissions, greenhouse gas and CO2 and some other thing, carbon, we would make sure that it be produced here because we do the cleanest job for producing energy in the entire world. I don't know about the Keystone. I love our One Oak pipeline, so maybe we'll find something, but that's not something I'm privy to.
Yeah, I thought I saw you got a lot of oil fields or storage up in the maybe North Dakota Mountains.
We do, yes.
You got a joint pipeline kind of coming down that way. I thought maybe.
Yeah.
Senator Thompson.
Just one quick question, Mr. Chair. Thank you. We're talking about the build out of natural gas plants to kind of replace the retiring coal plants. Do you see any issues with getting enough pipeline to supply the gas of these new plants?
It will take time, and building pipelines takes time, especially for long haul. And so unless all of electrification for gas plants is in close proximity to a long haul natural gas pipeline, it could take some time. I think that there is definitely the supply. A lot of it's in West Texas, New Mexico, North Dakota, and then you look over to Utica, Shale, and West Virginia, Ohio. But the other thing, along with electrification for natural gas, would be data centers and that new electric need. And so while a lot of states are wanting to move all to all electric, for example, then you throw in a data center, you're looking at reliability. And so I think there will be a significant conversation as companies are looking for where they would locate natural gas electrification facilities in proximity to natural gas pipelines, so they're not having to build long-haul pipelines that could take a whole lot longer for permitting and landowner easement acquisition.
I get, it sounds like, pipeline's difficult, transmission lines are difficult, so which is faster, you know, if you need to have that supply to a location?
Right. And so I think, yeah, it's probably both.
Yeah.
And Kansas is well positioned for that.
Okay, time 2:30.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you for your presentation, both of you, and we will adjourn the meeting.